Yeah, it's never their fault. It's somebody else's drugs. I just carried it for them.
Okay, yeah, there it is. There I am
So
on
you hear
Facebook.
that, you get tired of hearing that kind of stuff, but.
Okay,
it's just,
YouTube says I'm on too.
the
That's weird.
situations in families-
It's just a glitch in the caster.
Mind you, it's been in Tennessee, but with Amber and Austin, but everybody's got a social worker. They have a social worker. The little boy, he has a social worker. And the mom, she has a social worker. And so all these people kind of converge and get together, and they're all trying to help the one person that they're over or with or around, they're trying to see to their needs, And so there's so many people involved in this one kid. I mean, this is just one child. Can you imagine if there's sisters and brothers and all this other stuff? You would think, I just can't get over how many people are
To me, it
involved.
falls back that, well, not only to Jesus, but the daddies need to stay in the families. I mean, that's like a no-brainer. If a child does not have a father figure, or even if he has one that's being beat up, that article that you posted about what's
Yeah, you saw that?
I did. I read it from the start, and it's so true. What we've done as a nation, and even if you watch television, they're going to emasculate and dumb down the father roles. It's like turning that garbage off.
Yeah, this guy's work is under the title "The Boy Crisis," and he's done some pretty effective research, and also that TED Talk that he does on it, which he did, I think, 7 years ago. He's been he was a board member of the National Organization of Women for the longest time, and really promoted all these things that he now says has caused this really deep wound in males in our country, and it's actually causing our country problems, which shouldn't be the priority. It always seems to be, but we're more socialist than we understand. But the individual's still paramount, and he's saying that we've messed that up. It's really, read the whole thing, and it's a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do.
All of a sudden he just walked up. He was first. We were busy, and I remember Roger was having issues with it. I said, well, honey, that's typical for some of this type of things. But he just showed up, and he had about a 7 or 8-year-old little boy named Cole, and I can't remember, but their last name was Stevenson. And he had backpacks. They clearly, I'm sitting there with no car, no nothing, and I saw Heather take him, and I know Heather was, I don't think he was a foster person. I think he thought something was going on at the church, because he just appeared. It was like, and I don't know if he was coming from.
It may have come from the trailer park that they're cleaning out now.
Over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think
He's living under a board over there or something. That guy is wiping that trailer park out.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
It's
he
terrible.
was probably in his late 30s maybe. But sometimes they come over, but the little boy, he was drinking like a Starbucks. It was in a Starbucks cup.
Oh, yeah.
But they weren't in a vehicle. And the little boy just said, I'm cold, and that's all he said.
Yeah.
We were trying to, and we were giving him bags and stuff. And shit.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, my first thought was, well, does he come to the church? Because I've never seen him in church, or if he knew from the community.
I don't know him.
But,
No telling.
The last name was Stevenson.
I'm amazed at how many people are living in sheds in the backyards of people's houses. It's a lot. Did Heather mention what she was going to do with all this other? She's got a lot of stuff left over in there. Like cheese nips, and still got plants.
Did that happen on Saturday?
Was that for them?
Yeah.
Oh, that was her stuff?
Yeah.
No, because they took everything. I did not know.
She left this. She probably got in a hurry and left it. I'll call her and see. I just didn't know she mentioned anything about.
There's a ton of stuff over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gave them, I had like maybe 40 cupcakes left, because we gave them probably 30 or 40 out.
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw cupcakes. I think it's just
No, it's just cheese nips and plants.
I saw that stuff
plants and stuff.
when
thought it was something Cindy was doing with the kids. or
I
something.
thought that was y'all stuff, because I did not link that to this.
That's Heather's.
When was that again?
She brought it Thursday and she packed all those.
It's plants and
Yeah, she was-
crackers, Cheez-Its, stuff like that.
Yeah.
flags.
You know what, she wanted, yeah,
She probably forgot 'em.
Left here, she had like 4 truckloads of
Yeah.
plants that they didn't give away here, that we had already put together, so they were gonna take
Right.
to the next. And I told her hopefully on Florida Boulevard, she would have more traffic than way out here, you know.
I'll text her. I didn't realize it was there till just a while ago.
Yeah, I didn't know that was there, so I wouldn't have thought it out there.
I just thought it was for Cindy or something for the kids during church.
When
or
we got
something.
here, I set up the tables and I never opened the church. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
I was to myself, I figured, if I lose being out of the church, I knew I couldn't contain it, everybody coming up, it was locked up, it was like, okay, we're not going in there. And then when everybody left, we put the tables back.
Okay. So we're in Revelation chapter 14. And my notes are divided because the last time I did this, we divided it up for other reasons. But we'll try to get through all of it tonight. There's 2 overarching or overriding sections, verses 1 through 5. There's sort of an interlude that occurs, and then beginning with chapter 6, there's 3 angels and 3 messages. And even this section you could divide into 7 sections if you wanted to. But we're just going to take it the way it is and not really get bogged down in too much of that. It does help a little bit to try to read it and understand it, but there's nothing, I just don't think there's a lot here that's difficult to understand, but there's a lot of meaning that's packed into this little chapter. So the first 5 verses, it's kind of a response to what we saw in chapter 13. He says, "Then I looked, and here was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion. With him were 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. I also heard a sound coming out of heaven, like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. Now the sound I heard was like that made by harpists playing their harps. And they were singing a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one was able to learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from humanity as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And no lie was found in their lips. They are blameless." So we're going to stop and take a look at that, because in some traditions, this little passage has been used and abused and misunderstood in various ways. And we want to just take a quick look at it. And the notes, I hope, will help. So beginning, there's a contrast with the previous chapter. So what happens in 13 is John reveals to us the 2 beasts, one out of the land and one out of the sea, and all the havoc that they wreak upon the earth. And one builds an idol, and the idol is given life, and everybody starts worshiping the idol. And the kind of the climax of the whole story is the mark of the beast that's placed upon people so that they can buy and trade. The number being man's number 666. And so there's this stage set where things are not good. I mean, evil has just, has erupted upon the earth. And then John is given a glimpse into the future and what is to counter this that is happening or will soon happen upon the earth. And that's what we just read, was this different vision that gives us a contrast to the previous chapter. Previously, Satan's power is demonstrated through the 2 beasts, and then suddenly at once the Lamb comes on the scene, possessing Mount Zion with his army of believers. So one place of contrast here, when we look at the beast, they're standing in the sand, and here's the Lamb of God standing on the mountain, Mount Zion. So you may recall the end of the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is teaching about where are you going to build your house, on sand or on rock. And so here's this picture again that we're given in the contrasting presentations of these two sections. Here stand the two powers which set the stage for the final showdown that is coming. Both sides are preparing for this war, figuratively, but it has happened. There's a great conflict that will be decisive and noticeable, that will occur on the earth and in the heavens between Satan and the Lamb. Here are the contrasts. The beast versus the Lamb. The Lamb standing on the mountain, Satan standing on the sand. Every tribe and people and tongue and nation versus God's sealed 144,000 representing his people. We will get to the every tribe and nation here in just a minute. The mark of the beast versus his name and his father's name. Voice which speaks blasphemy versus the voices that we hear from heaven, or the voice that is later heard from heaven. The idolatry of the beast followers versus the purity of the Lamb's people. The deception of the beast versus the truthfulness of the Lamb's followers. So nearly every word of this passage has a parallel to another Revelation passage. So I was doing a little bit of reading on this today, and when we find a section of literature like this, it almost becomes an interpretive, where we go back and we can look and we can see, when you start putting this and this together, contrasting or comparing, there's an augmentation of the lesson that we're going through. So right here, what we're learning more and more about is how God's going to deal with this evil and setting the stage for that. All right. So 14:1 through 20 is presented in 4 sections. We just went over really well, we will go over the first one, which is what we just read, and then it's 6 through 12. Then verse 13 stands as its own little section or emphasis, and then 14 through 20. So when he says, look and behold, that's a prophetic introduction that we find in the Old Testament and also in the New Testament on a couple of occasions. And it's to cause us to look into what will happen. And so the Lamb is obviously Christ. The 144,000 are those who were sealed earlier and who have been on the earth. The number representative of Christians on the earth, or representative of all the redeemed in church and in the history of the church, according to Dr. Mounts. This answers the question of where exactly Mount Zion is located, in heaven or on earth. This whole scene is taking, Dr. Allen says that it's taking place on earth. Dr. Mount says that this whole scene is taking place in heaven. So John obviously is not seeing what's happening in his own time. So we're left with a decision to make. And if what is happening on earth is a reflection of what is happening in heaven, then it could be both. That's I can't remember that commentator that said it could be in both locations, or that this is setting the stage for the earthly confrontation. That's Dr. Hahn, which we're looking at. That would be on earth, and then Dr. Mounts says that this is figuratively something that is being seen in heaven.
Aren't some people preparing for because I've been to Israel?
Yes. There's a big movement underway to prepare for this to happen on earth. So the temple has to be restored, and animal sacrifice, all those things. I think that's John Hagee's whole ministry.
To Israel.
Yeah, is to, in fact, he has a program, I think, where you can give money and it's moving people that are outside of Zion area into Israel. I don't think that's quite what God has got us in the business of doing here. I mean, do y'all see that as being a part of God's plan for our lives as we...
Well, the only thing I do see is the land matters.
Yeah, and I do believe the land matters. I think that there is, there's no way that after 5,000 years, that it just no longer does matter.
I give this to you, Abraham, and it
Yeah.
belongs to you and your descendants. God has not changed his mind.
Yeah,
So
right.
the land matters. So no matter if it's going to be this great battle or it's going to be him speaking it, it's going to matter that he conquers it.
I think to that point, it's how that it matters. That makes all the difference. As a matter of possession, somewhat. As a representative ideal of God's promise, I think that is His greatest value. But when we get to the idea of the 144,000 being representative of the whole church, and we're following Christ wherever He goes, then really what matters is where He is. And but He's got to come back somewhere, and this is where
He says, where you saw him ascend, you're going to see him come right back.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
He's going to come back just like he went.
So there's no reason to believe that all of those things are not to have meaning for His final revelation. So I'm okay with it. I just have I'm just not as rigid a legalist as some
I
are.
think if you ever get the privilege to go, and I can only tell you my own personal experience, it is like something in your spirit when you get off of the plane, you go, I'm home. And when I left, I cried like a baby, and my tour guide said, I'm going to see you again as soon as I hear you. Maybe not, it's a once in a lifetime trip. She said, but you're coming back here. She said, I'll see you here. In other words, because she's a believer, she said, it's going to happen here, so you're coming back here. I'll see you here.
We know that it is this is a point in time. These things aren't nebulous and representative and figurative. These events will occur, so they have to occur in time and in a space. So there's every reason to believe that it'll occur here, as there would be any reason for it to occur anywhere. More so because of the great worth that God has placed upon it in His relationship to us, not just as human beings and not just as Jews, but as Christian believers. Let's see, verse 2 and 3. There's a choir in heaven. We don't know who makes up this choir, other than I believe it's the redeemed of God from the earth. But they're heard singing a new song. We can compare this with previous verses. Chapter 5, verse 9 talks about a new song. 19:6 will again talk about a new song. The song is an offering to the one who's on the throne. God is the Father, substantiated by the presence of the four living creatures and the elders around the throne. So the scene hasn't changed. This is where Dr. Mounts says, well, maybe this isn't occurring on earth, because we have to jump from heaven to earth in a short one-verse span here. But John has done that for us before. One may have expected John to record a great hymn marking Christ's return, but that honor is saved until the final victory, which we'll see later in 15. The 144,000 who stand with Christ are allowed or have earned the honor to learn the song of praise to God. Now that 144,000 is representative, and we will all know that song. This is not a special group of 144,000 that have been chosen as a literal numeric number. There's only one tradition that I find that to be true, and they're not necessarily viewed as Christian. Jehovah's Witnesses say there's going to be a literal 144,000. But I cannot find a commentary that from any other tradition that will tell you that that's limited to that number. It's representative of all the redeemed of the earth, the church. And so it is like we have a battle cry. There is a call to glorify and honor, and that those that believe are the only ones that will know what this is. And so yet another thing that attaches us to the Lamb in a special way and separates us from the rest of the world. And that's the whole point of 1 through 5, is to contrast with what is happening on the other end of the spectrum. Yes, sir.
I know we've talked about this before. It's still something I don't totally understand.
Okay.
And that is how to reconcile using two different interpretative methods in Revelation. One where you interpret a number as being a literal representation of what's being talked about, versus looking at a number and it's being figurative or metaphorical representation. So, in the beginning, you kind of said that there were 7 spirits and 7
Yes.
lamps. Here we're saying it's not an actual 144.
Yeah.
How do you know when to